Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today on Comparative Politics, we are going to be looking at why the study of comparative politics is important. In our last video on the scope of comparative politics, we've been able to see how vast of a field comparative politics is. So in this very video, we're going to be sharing 5 key reasons for the study of comparative politics. So stick to the very end of this video to learn about this. Let's get started. The first key reason for the study of comparative politics, which I believe is the most obvious of all, is understanding political systems. As we all know, there are different political systems across different nations of the world. You have different political systems like democracy, monarchy, military, dictatorship, and several practices across nations of the world. So comparative politics allows us to understand these different practices across these nations of the world. By doing so, it allows us to understand the complexity of how these political processes takes place in these different nations of the world. So through this, we're able to understand the roles of institutions across these nations of the world, their structures, their processes, how laws are being made in these different nations of the world. So comparative politics, by allowing us to compare the differences and similarities between and among this nation, allows us to understand how these different political systems are organized across the different nations of the world. The second reason for the study of comparative politics is that it allows us to learn from others. Since comparative politics allows us to compare the different policies that cut across these nations of the world, this would allow us to make better and informed policy. This is because during comparison, we get to learn about the sources and the weakness of those policies that cut across these nations of the world, as well as the policies being adopted by these different governments in addressing issues like healthcare, education, poverty. And by so doing, we can be able to craft out our own policy based on the sources or the mistakes being made in the implementation of these policies. So we get to learn from the mistakes of others and also get to learn from their sources. The third reason is identifying patterns. By comparing different nations of the world, we can be able to understand the different patterns that goes on within their political systems. For example, we can look at the patterns in terms of their election, social movements, how they handle crises, voters' behavior, and the likes of it. By identifying this pattern, we can be able to make predictions about the political outcomes that takes place in these countries. For example, a democratic regime is more inclined to adopt diplomacy in its approach than a military regime. So this pattern can give us insight in predicting political outcome. The next is it enhances critical thinking. In comparing different political systems that cut across nations of the world, comparative politics actually evaluates complex ideas, questions, and evidences in order to understand these processes that cut across these different nations of the world. So in so doing, comparative politics actually enhances our research ability and also our critical thinking, because it is not just about memorizing facts, but also trying to understand why things are the way they are and also what ways to actually ameliorate such things. So this evaluation of the what, why, and how helps us to develop our critical thinking when it comes to politics, which can also be implemented in other areas of our life. The fifth and final reason is preparing for global careers. Since comparative politics gives us insight on the different operations of political systems across nations of the world, this becomes very handy when chasing global careers, be it in the field of international relations, international law, international diplomacy, global journalism, and other global fields. This is as the knowledge of comparative politics comes handy when dealing with global issues like climate change, international trade, conflicts, and the likes of it. This brings us to the end of this video on why studying comparative politics is important. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can drop that in the comment section. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share. See you in the next video. Thanks.